Beautiful Anonymous changes each week. It defies genres and expectations. For example, our most recent episode, I talked to a woman who survived a murder attempt by her own son. But just the week before that, we just talked the whole time about Star Trek. We've had other recent episodes about sexting in languages that are not your first language, or what it's like to get weight loss surgery. It's unpredictable, it's real, it's honest, it's raw. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.
The sleeping giant of faith that has been unleashed in the days following Charlie Kirk's assassination. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Listen to this headline from The Guardian. The devil is not gonna win. How Charlie Kirk became a Christian nationalist martyr. Behind Charlie Kirk's spiritual journey that fused Christianity and politics, the New York Times wrote. And from NPR, the evangelical Christian faith on display at Kirk's memorial shaped his politics. Well, that's exactly how founding fathers forged this great country of ours, right? By blending faith with government, by recognizing that God is at the helm and politicians are only in positions of humble service to the people to uphold and protect the God-given individual liberties that are granted each and every individual. Right? In America, it's God first, politicians below that. And Charlie Kirk knew that. The devil is not gonna win, The Guardian writes in its headline, how Charlie Kirk became a Christian nationalist martyr. And if you read the headlines, if you watch the video clips, if you listen in to certain podcasts and radio shows and pay attention to what's going on in the news, especially in the coverage of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and the memorial service and the White House's response to the memorial service, and just the voice of Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk, just how it's being discussed and upheld and advanced and furthered around the world right now. It's clear there is a sleeping giant that has been unleashed. And boy, I bet Democrats are a little bit quivering in their boots right now about the upcoming elections. Because, of course, to Democrats, everything comes down to elections, election wins, campaign season. Before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. At Real Life Network, that is the faith-based news outreach of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California. Pastor Jack Hibbs is a senior pastor there, and he oversees RLN, Real Life Network. I'm happy to say that Bold and Blunt has been part of that lineup for a very long time. And I have some exciting news to announce. Real Life Network is also going to pick up Bold and Blunt in a video version. I'll have more on those specifics coming out later, but been in talks for a little while with a leading guy over there, and it seems like it's a go for this video production. So stay tuned for that. You may also get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com, where I want to point you to the bottom of WashingtonTimes.com webpage, where there is a newsletter section. If you click on it, you'll be taken to the page with all the newsletters. Find mine, Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, enter your email address, and you'll be signed up for my 3 times a week newsletter. Contains my commentaries, my Bold and Blunt podcast, whatever video versions of Bold and Blunt I do, and it'll be delivered right to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You may also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. So, just check it out. Go to Spotify, for example, or, Apple, and they have ratings there too. They have people who write in and tell what they think about Bold and Blunt. So, maybe if you want to see what others are saying about my podcast and why it is one of the fastest growing in one rating service podcasts, and one of the most well respected, according to one rating service, of conservative podcasts out there. You can go read the comments and see why, and even better, you can listen, sign up for it yourself. The Devil is Not Gonna Win, how Charlie Kirk became a Christian nationalist martyr. The Guardian is sort of leftist leaning, so take how they word things here with a grain of salt. Try not to be offended. But even so, understanding the general theme of this piece is that Charlie Kirk's voice was not silenced with his death, right? It's really interesting and inspirational how his message of Christianity and conservatism is carrying forth despite his death. And it just seems like especially young people are grabbing a hold of his messages now, and they're recognizing the absolute horror that is called the Democrat Party / left / Marxist / socialist / communist of the Democrat Party. And they're realizing that, hey, maybe Democrats aren't the best thing for not only our nation and our liberties, but for our security, our health, the ability to stay alive and not be assassinated, right? The right-wing pundits' meteoric career was in some ways a microcosm of the rise of Trump-era Christian nationalism, The Guardian writes. I'll read a little bit more from this. Christian nationalists in the U.S. are positioning Charlie Kirk as a martyr for their movement, one that has grown in popularity and whose rise was intertwined with Kirk's own political ascent. I take a little bit of offense to the wording of that, right? Because it almost seems like they're saying that Christian nationalists, which is first off a loaded term. I don't think it is. I think it's a term that describes what America is all about, being Christian first, American second, right? And the two are forever linked in terms of carrying forth individual liberties, carrying forth the notion of God-given rights and liberties. So Christian nationalist is a term, though, that the left has tried to spin into something that means, KKKer. But it's just not true. So I suspect that the term Christian nationalist was purposely chosen by this Guardian writer in order to give it that little KKK type of stab in the back. That being said, I don't take offense at it. I proudly proclaim myself a Christian nationalist. Anyhow, Christian nationalists in the U.S. are positioning Charlie Kirk as a martyr. Here's the part, though, that I too do take offense at. Positioning Charlie Kirk? Okay, the guy was assassinated, right? The guy was murdered. And the video of his murder, very bloody murder, as I understand it. I didn't see the video myself of the bullet entering his neck and the aftermath. But the video is out there for his kids to see, right? For his kids, his two kids, as they grow, as they mature, to see. And so it's not as if Christian nationalists woke up one day and said, hey, let's talk about strategies for pushing forth a Christian nationalist message. And perhaps one strategy could be, like, if Charlie Kirk was murdered in public, maybe we could use his death. Maybe we could exploit his death. So this wasn't something that was devised by conservatives in America. This was an act of horror. It was an act of savage, brutal, murderous horror that came out of the blue, that came out of left field, and it was done by somebody who did not like Charlie Kirk's message, truthful, Bible-based messages, and it was done for political reasons. It was a political assassination by this Tyler Robinson, allegedly, who was living with a transgender and didn't like Charlie Kirk's message of transgenderism. He called Charlie Kirk hateful, said his messages, he was sick of the hateful messages of Charlie Kirk, so he decided to murder him. So it's not as if Christian nationalists, it's not as if conservatives in America are positioning Charlie Kirk to become a martyr for the MAGA movement. It's Charlie Kirk was murdered. And the natural outcome of that, the natural growth of that, the natural consequence of that is that conservatives who already were in line with Charlie Kirk's MAGA type message and Christian message were outraged and see his assassination as just an utterly abhorrent and shocking, outrageous act of the left. Are we supposed to not talk about Charlie Kirk now? Are we supposed to just move on and pretend it didn't happen? Wouldn't the Democrats love that, right? So to say that conservatives, Christians are positioning Charlie Kirk as a martyr for their movement, it just puts this taint on the natural, prayer-filled, prayerful outpouring of compassion and shock and outrage that have come in the days since Charlie Kirk's murder among those of Christian faith, among those of conservative beliefs, and among those of the sane side of maybe left-leaning, previously left-leaning, previous Democrats of independent-minded who have been awakened to the horror of aligning themselves with the left. It's not exploiting Charlie Kirk to talk about Charlie Kirk and his message and to pledge that his message of Christian conservatism won't die, but rather has awakened as a sleeping giant. That's not exploiting. That's what's going to happen. So another thing that I don't like about this Guardian opener is it says that basically this has grown in popularity. Christian nationalism has grown in popularity, and Charlie Kirk has grown in popularity because of the rise of Trump Christian nationalism. I don't think that's true. I think there are plenty of Christian nationalists in America who were silent and maybe didn't even refer to themselves in their own minds as that label, Christian nationalists, until Democrats started using that term as a way of damaging the reputations of those who believed in God and who were patriotic at the same time. That's when Christian nationalists became a negative term. And then they tried to paint Donald Trump as a Christian nationalist and all the MAGA movement as Christian nationalism, under which Charlie Kirk fell, right? The umbrella of Christian nationalism, Charlie Kirk was put under that by the left. And they tried to group that all together as a way of just slamming all MAGA types as I said, KKKers. So it wasn't that Charlie Kirk, because Donald Trump invented Christian nationalism, Charlie Kirk then came along and carried that same torch. And because of Trump's popularity, Charlie Kirk's popularity grew under the umbrella of Christian nationalism. It's that America was founded on principles of Christian nationalism, of Judeo-Christian, Bible-based truths, and a Judeo-Christian form of government, Judeo-Christian principles put forth in government, that America was founded upon that, and that too many in America were cowed down. Too many Christian nationalists were silenced by a determined left to root out God from government. And so too many conservatives, too many Christians were quieted and silenced over the years because they were afraid to speak out in support of Christian nationalism. And then Donald Trump came, and he carried forth those principles. And when he was slammed as a Christian nationalist, he didn't shy from the term, he embraced it. So did Charlie Kirk, I'm sure. I honestly don't know if he ever proclaimed himself as a Christian nationalist, but the principles he put forth were aligned with Christian nationalism. So to say that this is all now the conservative movement, the Christian community, the Christian nationalist movement is just using Charlie Kirk's death to push forth a political belief. It's just, it's distressing. It's predictable of the left, and it's so ugly. So let's just recognize that the Democrats, though, are desperate. They're in a desperate situation because they see the outpouring of support that Turning Point USA and Erica Kirk and the whole movement is receiving now. The thousands upon thousands who attended the memorial service, the thousands upon thousands who couldn't get into the memorial service because it was filled to capacity, the venue was, and so they stood outside and just to show their support. And Democrats are worried about that because they know elections are coming, and they're worried that America is undergoing a reawakening of the spirit of America, and recognizing that Democrats are anything but aligned with American principles. And really, if the political world is to be changed, if Democrats are to be forever pushed into the dark corners where their socialist, Marxist, communist beliefs belong, then the reawakening in America has to start, continue, and end in the church. And I am very happy to say that my guest today is seeing some hopeful movements within the church community of America. And it's very inspirational to those of us who have watched with a little bit of sadness and even concern / fear that church pews have been emptied over the years, because we know that in America, you can't have God-given rights and liberties if you remove God from that equation. And part of the equation of keeping God at the forefront in America is to fill the pews in church. So there is some good news brewing in the church community. My guest today is J.P. Gance, and I want to say welcome. Thank you so much, JP, for being on Bold and Blunt.
Hey, Cheryl. Thanks for having me.
So you are the founder of Communio, which is a ministry that works with hundreds of churches. And one of your findings is that in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, the pews are being filled in churches. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're getting reports from all over the country, really. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and in Douglas County out there in Colorado, a very secular town where there's a real discernible bump up in Sunday attendance, particularly among young people. There's a number of folks from the Gen Z demographic. I had a pastor tell me that at his church there's a number of young adults who attended when they were much younger, were showing back up in recent Sundays as well.
And do you think this is a lasting thing, or do you think it's just, in the next week or two?
Look, it's a great question. Look, the closest thing to what we're seeing right now is what happened following 9/11. Obviously, that was a different tragedy, of a much larger scope, right? But there was a bump up afterwards. One of our points to pastors and churches is now's the time when there's somebody who's showing back up to church for the first time in a long time, or maybe they're giving church a chance for the first time in their lives. It's incredibly important to provide a real community of believers that are ready to welcome them in, right? Folks want to believe I'm sorry, people want to belong before they believe, right? There's a saying that we have, which is you believe, belong, become, right? Which is first, folks who, you start by belonging, and then if you belong and meet the people there, then you start to believe, and then in believing, you become something more, right? And so that's one of our big points. And we see these young people showing up for the first time, have a plan of action, right? So say hello, make sure that if you're invite them, have a conversation where you learn about their background, their own story, their own journey. Ask good questions. Be curious, and in being curious about someone else, we all love to share our story. Let folks share their own story, and just listen. And in that context of hearing their story and being a listening ear, you can build a real relationship of trust. And when a person starts to trust, they start to be curious about you, about why you believe what you believe, right? And so, and you can help someone grow and get to the place where Jesus wants them to get.
What kind of message are the churches that you work with putting out about Charlie Kirk's murder?
It's a good question. Ranging from some churches who aren't talking about it in any significant way to churches that are certainly embracing his message as a. There's many things that folks can say. He was a political organizer, an activist, a conservative activist. But there's something traumatic that happened that young people just saw. They saw. We're not supposed to see a young man die in front of us on video, on a video feed on our social media, right? That's a traumatic thing. And this is a young person who spoke to young people with frequently a message that was challenging young people to live for more, right? That to go and go and love someone, go form, get married, form a family, live for these enduring things, and live for Christ, live for the gospel. These are frequent messages. So that message being repeated and frequently coming back to mind to young people at the same time that you saw this young person who died there, right, in a traumatic way. In viewing it, I think you have this combination of refocusing a young person's mind on those permanent things, those enduring things. So now they're seeing a man that's not much older than them, dying in such a way, and now meeting his Maker, meeting his Lord. It causes I think it creates an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to work in such a tragedy. That's oftentimes what happens, how God works. The Holy Spirit starts to move in times of tragedy, reaching people. But it won't. You're right. Like, the question is, will it endure? The evidence in past, right, 9/11 things started. That bump went away. I will say there's a lot of evidence. Other evidence, the Barna Group has survey research on this, that young people are plugging into churches more than their the older millennial counterparts. Young men in particular seeking out and getting involved in churches at rates that are much higher than in the past.
I'm sure you've heard the news, that Erica, Charlie's wife, has been appointed the CEO of Turning Point USA. And as I understand it, she's pledging to continue the talks on campus that her husband had done. And I'm a little bit curious about this because it seemed to me one of Charlie's big draws on college campuses was that he spoke about the need for men to be men. And it's through a biblical lens, through biblical teachings. And For a woman, even someone as courageous as Erica seems to be, for a woman to come out on college campuses and try and teach men that, it doesn't seem the same. So where do you see Turning Point USA going?
Yeah, I interpreted her statements as, certainly I could see her showing up on campus and going for kind. But I also think there may be other advocates that represent Turning Point who will be young men as well who will show up. I think, look, Charlie is a once in a generation force of nature, right? And in a certain sense, replacing that can't be done. But you can, I think Turning Point will do. I expect them to do a good job of having a number of people showing up and representing a biblical worldview, traditional values, a conservative perspective, and being a positive advocate. I'll say my friend Kristen Hawkins with Students for Life has been showing up on college campuses in different ways. Lila Rose showing up on campuses. She just won a debate at Yale in this a little over a week ago before this, or a few weeks ago before the tragedy. So there are some young women who are effective advocates. But yes, I would agree with you, Cheryl. There's things that young women can do to speak to young men and to young women. But there's, I think, some inherent limitations on, I think, Charlie's ability to challenge men around traditional masculine virtues, right, that are the biblical virtues for men. He's and the fact that he lived them, right? Like, this is a man, I was taken by some of the stories that I've learned about Charlie since his death. Here's a guy that's traveling many, many days a year. It was, I don't know if it was hyperbole, but his pastor saying, 320 out of 365 days is an awful lot. And he, I don't know if it was, that many days a year, but if it was, his wife shared that in such a busy life, he did two things that I think were pretty neat that we can all apply to our own marriage, our own lives. One was, each week he would take a Sabbath from his smartphone, his device. Okay, just be with his family, 24 hours with no device, and I think that's pretty neat. And number two, he every Saturday would send her electronically a love note, right? And he closed that by just asking how can he serve her better, right? And here's a good example of a man who's seeking to live out Ephesians 5, that 5:21, the apostle writes, be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. And here's Charlie gave a good example of leading in his marriage, but doing so in a servant manner. And I think that that's a great example to young men on leadership and leadership in the context of marriage.
Just to wrap up here, JP, you don't have to, you're speaking to the choir on this with me and probably many of my listeners, but we look around at the world and we recognize it's a battle of principalities that is going on.
Yes.
But are you surprised, or were any in your church community surprised by what's going on within the Democrat Party, within the leftist political ideologues of today's world in regards to the response to Kirk's assassination?
It certainly made things pretty transparent in the divide between right the recognizing that for so many on the left, right? You see this in data on Charlie saw this before he was assassinated. The assassination culture on the left. You see this where in polling that shows a large number of Democrats that believe violence is acceptable in politics. And in fact, we saw this in the Congress with a number of sitting members of the U.S. House of Representatives who chose not to vote to disavow political violence. This is really outrageous. But if we understand the origins of the left, right? The term left comes from the French Revolution. It was in the National Assembly that the radicals sat on the left side of the assembly, and the more conservatives sat to the right side of the assembly, and these were the left. They gave us the French left gave us the guillotine, and so I think in many ways you can an ideology that believes the ends justify the means is going to be okay with some pretty terrible means from time to time. And I think you see this in celebration of this isn't your rank and file. This is not your rank and file. There's plenty of Democrats, great Democrats who disavow, and I think Bill Maher has been really great on this, and a lot of liberals, I'd say, circa 2010 liberals who are very good on this, but there's a large radical element within the American left that we've got to reckon with. That there's a number of people who are more than comfortable with violence, and when they see someone who's a victim of violence, even lash out at the victims of violence, because frequently they see this in such radical ideological terms that there's a failure to be empathetic. You can't, and that was Charlie was a neat thing about Charlie is he frequently. He so frequently reached out to others on the other side. I think I credit Van Jones a lot, who obviously I'm not a big fan of Van Jones at all. But it was really neat that he didn't have to, he shared this point that on September 9th, the day before Charlie was assassinated, Charlie direct messaged him, I believe on X, and said, look, we should be gentlemen. Let's get together and just talk about our differences. I know you'll be a gentleman. I'll be a gentleman. We'll disagree, but we'll demonstrate to people that we can disagree agreeably. And he shared. I think Van Jones was really when he shared that on CNN, he was really impacted by that. I think that's a great thing, and it shows. There's obviously plenty of people out there on the left who don't embrace that kind of really culturally destructive ideology.
And I wish they'd speak up more. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for bringing this data forward. Very interesting the churches are filling. JP Gance, thank you. And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.
Hey, this is Dan Harris, host of the 10% Happier podcast. I'm here to tell you about a new series we're running this September on 10% Happier. The goal is to help you do your life better. The series is called Reset. It's all about hitting the reset button in many of the most crucial areas of your life. Each week, we'll tackle a topic like how to reset your nervous system, how to reset your relationships, how to reset your career. We're going to bring on top-notch scientists and world-class meditation teachers to give you deep insights and actionable advice. It's all delivered with our trademark blend of skepticism, humor, credibility, and practicality. 10% Happier is self-help for smart people. Come join the party.